No. Buddha. Okay, friends. So now this is the time for the Dhamma talk. So what is the Dhamma? Now for those Buddhists, if you ask them what is the Dhamma, they'll say, oh, the teachings of the Buddha. And if you ask them, well, what did the Buddha teach? He taught the Dhamma. So, which came first? The Buddha, the Dhamma, the chicken or the egg? Now, as the Buddha himself said on many occasions, that he simply rediscovered the ancient path to the liberating the mind from confusion and suffering. So the Buddha didn't invent the Dhamma or invent some spiritual teaching. That he rediscovered the ancient path, you could call it the ancient spiritual path leading to the complete elimination and overcoming of suffering and continued repeated birth and death. Now, other religions also tend to say that that's what they teach too, but the Buddhist teaching is a little bit different than some other, sort of religious philosophies and so on that are centered around a creator being and so on. Anyway, so basically the Dhamma, the Buddha taught about the natural laws, and especially in terms of the natural laws that cause suffering in the world, causes people to suffer. Because the Buddha was interested, the primary motivation that the Buddha had in undertaking his search for enlightenment was to discover the cause of suffering, the physical suffering as well as mental suffering, and also the mind getting caught up in the law of karma, cause and effect, and people doing all kind of actions that bring themselves problems and sufferings. And he really wanted to know what is the cause of that. He had a scientific, bent. His mind was, has the scientific viewpoint of trying to find out what is the cause of suffering. And so, he wasn't so much interested in, finding the cause of suffering in the external world, but he was interested in finding out how each person creates it, because he saw how all the people in the world, they suffer in different ways. Some people are born into abject poverty and have, suffering from physical deformities, physical illnesses, or just struggling to find food to eat. And other people are born and seem to be more pleasant conditions, like he himself was born into the lap of luxury as a prince. And he saw that every person was totally different in terms of the things that happened to them in life. And so some of the religious teachers of the day were saying, well, it's just by chance that all that happens. Or it was all, under the direction of the God, or different kind of ideas like that. But the Buddha wasn't really satisfied with these kind of answers. He thought there must be more to it than that. So anyway, that was his motivation for, going out to try to find the cause of suffering. And he saw that suffering has different levels. There's physical suffering, as well as mental suffering, and even you could say a kind of spiritual suffering. And that means basically not knowing the truth, and people's minds just wandering around in circles indefinitely in a low level of experience, and not ever really achieving states of higher happiness and so on. Anyway, so most of you know the Buddhist teachings are centered around the Four Noble Truths. That suffering exists, and what is the cause of the suffering, and that the suffering can be overcome, and the way to live, think, and meditate that will help to achieve that. To unravel the karmic knots in the mind and to experience a greater freedom. So basically, for the Buddha, suffering was deeply rooted in the mind, through not knowing the truth of the mind. But every living being is searching for happiness. Would anybody question that? Even a tiny ant, if it's walking along the ground and you put your finger down in front of the ant, what would happen normally? It would stop, turn around, maybe go back or try to go around. And why would he do that? Or she? Why would the ant do that? Because it senses some danger there. Well, compared to an ant, our finger, compared to a tiny ant, would be like us standing at the foot of the World Trade Center when it came down. You saw all the pictures, right, of people screaming and running out of fear. The same way, if you put your finger down in front of an ant or a small insect, that same kind of fear is there. So that means there's something very conscious, something very alive, and something even that tiny. And basically, it's the fear, it's the desire to live in happiness and free from pain. And that's really what drives people's life. Everybody wants to be happy. If everybody wants to be happy, why is there so many wars and killing and other crimes and people suffering in so many ways? We have to kind of think about that. That's what the Buddha thought about too. So even though people want to be happy, they're doing the very things that cause them suffering. And, and that's why the Buddha was focused his research, his thesis, his PhD thesis on the true, deeper nature of suffering. And through his own experience, in meditation and his reaching enlightenment, he understood that deepest nature of suffering, and it lies deep within the mind. And he also understood the law of nature, which causes that suffering, which is the law of karma. And the law of karma is a cornerstone teaching of the Dhamma teachings, but it's a law of nature. The Buddha didn't make it up; he didn't invent it. But it's a natural law, like gravity. So with gravity, what happens if you throw up a rock? What happens? Comes down, sometimes with a big thud. So the same way, the law of karma as it operates through our body and mind, if we throw something out of our mouth, like some words, it goes outward through other people's minds, and it creates something, a reaction within their mind, depending on what those words are, and it causes an opposite, equal or opposite reaction in them that then comes back to us like a boomerang effect, or in what is called Newton's law. So you'll know Newton's law. What did old Sir Isaac say? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Anybody hear that before? So that, kind of describes the law of karma to a great extent. Both the law of gravity and the Newton's law, which are sort of laws of physics, pertain to the mind and its interaction with the world around it. And so if you put out actions and speech and thoughts of greed, hatred, and delusion, then we'll be getting back this kind of energy from others to come back to us. And if we put out the opposite, such as kindness and generosity, selflessness, harmlessness, and so on, then we'll also receive these kind of more positive vibrations that come back to us. And that really forms the essence of the teachings of the Buddha. Now, the Buddha described this in the first two verses of the Dhammapada. Dhammapada is an important, Buddhist text of short verses. In the first two verses of that goes something like, all actions are led by the mind. Mind is their master, mind is their maker. If one acts or speaks with a defiled state of mind, then suffering will follow, as the cart wheel follows the foot of the ox. And in the same way, if one acts or speaks with a pure state of mind, then happiness will follow, as your shadow follows you around. So right in this statement is really the essence of the teachings of the Dhamma. And all the different practices that you find, the Noble Eightfold Path, practices of meditation, they're all designed at learning how to understand that and to live in harmony with the laws of nature. Because most people are living out of harmony with the laws of nature. And basically, those actions that bring suffering are, with, it's caught up in this law of karma, but it's the actions that bring suffering are those motivated by, as I mentioned, greed, hatred, and delusion. And it's considered the five precepts. So those five precepts that I recited, that you also took last night, and these people who brought lunch, you were reciting the five precepts, which are the main guidelines of skillful living, or to use the term morality, right? So to abstain from killing living beings, stealing things, using all kinds of negative speech, slander, lies, harsh words, then abusing, harming people through aggressive sexual cravings and so on, and intoxicating the mind. And now if you just think about these five, all the ills, or 99% of all the ills in the world, social ills, wars, even within our own mind, can be traced back to having, not lived according to having indulged in these kind of actions that bring suffering. Now, can any of you in your own experience, if you just think back, maybe 15, 20 years ago or whatever, if you had broken any of those precepts, and if it had any kind of consequence that followed you around even a long time afterwards, anybody think of anything? Remember anything? No? You're all saints? I can remember a lot. Anyway, but okay, imagine it, right? Okay, you read the news, right? All these wars, all these rapes, pillaging, plundering, hatred in the world. It's all traced back to people not being able to follow those five precepts. I mean, what's the big deal? 5 little precepts, 5 little rules. Why can't people follow them? If it's creating them suffering, now, again, we already admitted people want to live in happiness. But yet they're doing the things that bring themselves and their others unhappiness. So this is the logic that the Buddha was thinking. Then he asked, why? Why is it so hard to follow these rules? Because they're deeply ingrained deep within the mind. The greed, hatred, and delusion. And so people basically, they can't control their urges. It boils down to that. People can't control their urges. And these habits that people have been repeating for millennia, and even passed on through DNA, are so deeply ingrained, even down into the DNA levels. Science is now even saying, there's a gene for anger, a gene for almost any type of emotion. So the whole point is that, these habits of the mind go all the way down to the very sort of cellular level of our mind and nervous system. And actually, to go back and actually, what is the mind? And this was what the Buddha was most importantly, wanting to understand. What is this mind? And it goes all the way back to time of conception. So you want to take a little journey? A little journey back in time? So imagine at the time of conception, right? Mother and father produce the cells of a new being. That moment of conception is a one-cell organism. Then in the space of 9 months, that one-cell organism multiplied into, now they're saying, many trillions of cells. I thought it was just a few billion. They're saying no, even trillions of cells make up even a human baby. In the space of 9 months, going from 1 to trillions, there's a lot going on there. With the cell division. And at that point of conception, consciousness was there at that first point too. Or very shortly thereafter, consciousness, coming from another location or realm, joined with that fetus. And with each cell division, that consciousness also went into each succeeding cell. So if you can follow this kind of logic, because it's very important to understand. That basically every cell of our body has a consciousness or an awareness. And they're all connected, in the nervous system. And all that process was happening in the present moment with the body. That means the mind and the body were inseparable. It was a spark of awareness that would power the cell division and the creation of the material body. So every cell of the body has basically a mind or awareness. And they're connected in what I call the inner internet. Because, the human organism has all these marvelous interconnected systems, right? Immune system, respiration, metabolism, and some others. And it all occurred through natural wisdom. And basically, it occurred and unfolded, without any doctors or IBM computers or AI, right? So that and every part of the body could communicate with each other. If you got something happened on your toe, that would, be relayed to the brain, and it would trigger off something, blood clots or something else, immune system. Bacteria come in, immune system be triggered. Everything was working in harmony through natural wisdom. But then what happens at birth? Baby comes out of the womb. One of the first things that happens when the baby comes out of the womb is, I don't know, any of your mothers, can you remember that? What does the doctor do? Pair of scissors, cuts the cord. Now the baby becomes disconnected from that source of life force. And it starts breathing, and now it can start to breathe on its own. But anyway, when the baby is born, its mind is still basically in that state that it was in the womb. That means in present moment awareness and in total connection with the body. Without any thoughts in the mind, without any sort of concepts. But then the parents give it a name. Little Johnny, little Susie, and all relatives come over and hold it and, gucci gucci goo, and start calling its name. And, it might take several months or even longer, all the relatives come over calling in its name. Then finally, after a while, it starts to, here's a word, and it starts to look. So now it's starting to identify a word, thinking, oh, that must refer to this thing. Then it starts to get more conscious of, oh, this is me somehow. And then it starts to learn language and identifying things. And it's drawn outward now, it's drawn outward. Because in the womb there was nothing much to see, right? But now it's come out, now it's focused outward. So that awareness that was centered deep within the body now starts to get pulled outwardly. And as it starts developing, crawling, babies crawl around and they look at something, want to grab it and go somewhere else. And so their mind now is totally getting focused in the external world. And then the sweet grandmother brings the baby its first chocolate, or sweet. The baby tastes that chocolate and they go, get a pleasant feeling, and probably smiles because it's producing a pleasant feeling. And maybe something else might cause it a painful feeling, kind of pull away. Or maybe the uncle or somebody will hold the baby too tight and cause it some discomfort, and so it'll have a kind of a painful feeling. And then little by little it starts to identify the grandmother who keeps on coming over every week, bringing it sweet. And the baby starts to hope that face will come again in the future because it's expecting a pleasant feeling. And the person who's causing it a painful feeling is hoping that person will not come again in the future because it doesn't want that painful feeling. So little by little, with everything it comes into contact with, it starts developing this syndrome or this situation in which these things it identifies as being sources of pleasure, and I want to get them again in the future. And these other things are a source of discomfort or pain, and I hope that they don't come again in the future. So this kind of relationship gradually, develops over time, over, some few years. And this is the birth of the past and future. And if the mind starts to then, everything that happens to us, the mind starts to see it in terms of, pleasure and pain, and the past and the future, with regards to things that you see, hear, smell, taste, touch on the body, or even think about. The mind has divided everything into things. These things produce a pleasurable feeling, and I like them, and I want them. These other things produce a painful, unpleasant feeling, and I dislike them. I want to get away from them. And the baby, the person's not planning this to happen. It just kind of just happens. And because the baby's also watching the way his parents or her parents are acting, now with the media, of course, all the programs and news and seeing everybody caught up in the same way, people think it's normal. Anyway, so the baby gradually, the person it loses that connection to the body. It loses that connection to the present moment. And it's really the essential cause of the suffering. When the mind is now dependent on the past and future, and it loses that connection with the present moment. Because all problems in the world are problems of the past and the future. Think of any worry or fear or anxiety or something else that you might have that's not connected to something you think is going to happen in the future, or something from the past coming back to affect you. Take 5 seconds to see if you can think of something. So this is really one of the most important aspects to understand about the mind. It's really how the mind has developed. So it's the search for pleasure and the avoidance of pain. And it's connected with the past and the future. Because everything we experience it from the past. You hear a sound or see something and the mind identifies it as this thing happened in the past. And if it was something pleasant, then craving for it to happen again in the future arises. Or if it was something painful, fear and worry about it coming again in the future will be recreated in the mind. And you don't have to think about these things. It just automatically happens. It's just the way the brain and the nervous system has been evolved and how it's been conditioned. And the mind gradually, loses that natural connection to the present moment, and substitute an alternative kind of search for happiness, or gets a step ahead of itself. And the Buddha saw this as really being the deepest form, the deepest source or cause of the problems. Because if you're depending on the world for your happiness, and that world, doesn't come to you, or your ideas of happiness don't come, you don't have the means to satisfy your idea of what will make you happy, then you will go out and start lying, cheating, stealing, pillaging, plundering, raping, killing, in order to satisfy, to get what you want, or to get away from what you don't want. And that's all in the name of, happiness. We're trying to find happiness in the world. But as we all know, it's what is the source of, the suffering in the world. So the Buddha examined this very, very carefully. And that's why he wanted to teach people about the nature of the mind and how to reconnect with their natural mind. That's the main thing. The Buddha just didn't say, well, this is suffering and, that's it. There's nothing you can do about it. But he said, no. He understood through his own experience that one can actually use the inherent powers of our mind to change the way that we think and act, and especially to get reconnected back to the present moment, so we reconnect with the natural happiness of the present moment, rather than having to artificially create or bring some happiness in from the external world, which we can't control. So that's why the Buddha in his his understanding when he developed his teaching and through the meditation practice was a way of learning how to gradually reconnect to the natural awareness, the present moment awareness, and by getting reconnected to the body. Because basically the mind and body have been split apart. Now, how many of you in your meditations this morning were sitting here, but then for some moments you got lost in the thoughts and you even forgot that you were sitting here meditating, just lost in a world of thoughts? Anybody? Raise your hand. Only one, two, give me 3, 4, 5. So that the habit of our mind to think about the past and the future, that's has become so strong that it's not easy to overcome that. So in all the teachings that you find in the Buddha, really, the path, the Noble Eightfold Path, is about learning how to get reconnected to the present moment, to live more in the present moment, and therefore also be able to see your thoughts before you've been carried away in them or reacted to them, and to see clearly how the world is actually being created moment by moment within the mind. Now, another important statement of the Buddha was that the world, the arising of the world, the ceasing of the world, and the path leading to the ceasing of the world is right within this 5 or 6 foot long body with its nervous system, memory, and consciousness. So what that means is basically the mind creates our idea of the world. And actually for the Buddha, this earth is not really the world. Or what the ordinary person thinks of the world, the solar system with the sun and the planets going around and, these billions of stars, the so-called world. The Buddha wasn't interested in that. That's not the world for the Buddha. But the world for the Buddha was the world of seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, and so on, and how our mind is creating the idea of the world. Because a lot of people live on this earth, but they experience the world in different ways. And people who have psychotic breaks, they might not be, aware of the world around them. They're totally lost in a state of mind. Just like when you were meditating or when you're dreaming. And that's where we react to everything that's happening in our mind. So this is really what the Buddha wanted us to try to see and to kind of get a handle on. Because the mind operates deep within the unconscious mind. I mean, our thoughts, our memories, our emotions that we've been accumulating our whole life are basically, deep down in the unconscious mind. But normally our consciousness is just on the surface. It's not centered in the body, it's sort of out there. So we don't see our thoughts coming until we become lost in them. Again, coming back to your experience in meditation. You were sitting trying to just remember sitting, breathing. But yet, before you know it, you're either, drowsing off, or you were maybe lost in some thoughts. So why do you get lost in the thoughts? Think about it, logically. Why do you get lost in your thoughts? Because you didn't see them coming. Now you wanted to sit there and just keep remembering and feeling, sitting, breathing, but all of a sudden you got lost in thoughts. Because you didn't see them coming. If you would have seen it coming, said, thinking is arising. I don't need to think about this. You stay there with the sitting and breathing. But because you didn't see them, you get carried away. It's similar to, let's say you are on your sofa watching the television in the evening. A drama or a sporting event or what. And you're intently looking at the TV, and somebody pulls up in front of, in a car pulls up in front of the house, but you don't really hear that because you're distracted by the TV. What's happening? Rooting for the good guys or the bad guys. And then you don't hear the person getting out and slamming the car door. You don't hear the neighbor's dog barking because you're distracted. And the person walks over on the side of your house and climbs over the fence. You don't see them rattling the chain fence as they're climbing over it. And the person drops down in your backyard and starts opening your window, but you're still engrossed in the movie. And the person comes in, steals all your things, and goes out. And only later, when you've gone in looking for something, what's happened to that? You realize that a thief came in. So the same way with our mind, when we're not grounded and centered more in the present moment, we don't see our thoughts and urges until they've already carried us away or caused us to do something that then we regret later. To use some bad speech, or to use some bad body language, or to whatever, do some action. Now, let's go back to that example, sitting on watching television. Let's say, okay, sitting on your sofa watching the TV, but still you're keeping some contact with the body. Let's say if you've developed the meditation to a certain extent. And you're watching there, but still, you understand you're watching, but you can still kind of feel the clothing touching your skin. You can feel other things on the body. And so that when you hear a car drives up, because part of your attention is here, you hear that noise. Oh, somebody's pulling up in front. You might say, oh, well, it's probably somebody going to the neighbor's house. Yeah, never mind. But then you hear the dog barking, and it kind of alerts you a little bit more. Oh, where's the dog barking? Yeah, that person. And then you hear him climbing over the back fence. You say, well, my friend wouldn't climb over the back fence. And so you'd slowly get up and you'd walk back to the house and stand by the window. When the person climbs into the window, you put a big bag over his head and call the cops. So that's very similar to how the practice of mindfulness works. If have developed our concentration and are more centered in the body and attentive, not lost in our thoughts, that when an urge to move comes or a painful feeling arises, we can, oh, painful feelings is arising now. Okay, then you can think, well, that's not that bad. There's no need to move, like a little itch on your face. You can see the urge to want to remove the itch. You say, well, the itch is not that bad. You just watch it a few moments, it disappears, so you don't have to waste your energy getting rid of it, because it'll go away anyway. Or some disturbing sound. If you're trying to meditate and somebody's coughing next to you, or they're talking outside, or whatever. And you can notice yourself starting to get upset. You can, or you can just be aware, hearing. Sound has arisen. Or thinking. But because part of your attention is still there, connected to the body, there's a kind of a space gets created, a space between the observing consciousness and the object, which gives you a few split seconds to think or consider what you're going to do, and if it's really necessary to think more about that object or to react to it. Or if you just have patience and observe it for a little longer, you'll see that it'll change and vanish, usually, by itself, without having to expend energy in trying to get rid of it. And so this is where the aspect about impermanence comes. So impermanence is one of these other laws of nature that the Buddha discovered, along with the law of karma. There's two intrinsic aspects of nature, that everything changes. But it's primarily in our mind, but also even in the physical objects. That we understand that everything is constantly changing. And so if you have patience and wait, that thing will change, and you don't have to waste energy trying to forcibly change it, which would then cause more entanglement with those objects, and to incur the feedback or the repercussions of that, Newton's law. So these are really the important aspects of understanding that the Buddha saw as being the crux in the development of suffering, and also the way to gradually overcome those type of reactions. And there's another teaching of the Buddha, which I like, very interesting. Some people came to the Buddha, actually it was a deva came to the Buddha. And they said, Master Gotama, the outer tangle and the inner tangle, this world is entangled in a tangle. And I asked Master Gotama, who succeeds in disentangling this tangle? And that's when the Buddha then gave his reply. When one is standing on the ground of morality or skillful conduct, has understood the law of karma and develops their mindfulness and concentration, that person succeeds in disentangling this tangle. And the tangle is basically, the outer tangle refers to the world of multitudinous objects. Everything that you can see, taste, smell, touch, feel, or think about. And the inner tangle is the mind's karmic entanglement with them. That means the greed, the hatred, the despair, the depression, the whole gamut of mental reactions and emotions that's tied up with all of these objects that one has invested its whole life in. And when they change, we don't know. We don't know why. When they change, then we can't detach from it. And then people suffer from grief, despair, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair, simply because they have not understood how this whole tangle of the mind has ensued. And the starting point was that disconnection with the body. And that's why in the teachings of meditation, the Buddha, his primary teaching of meditation was the 4 foundations of mindfulness, which begins with mindfulness of the body. And mindfulness of the body has some different sections to it, but mindfulness of the breathing is one of those first. And he taught it in that order because he saw that, the first stage of disentangling the tangle was to get regrounded, reconnected to the body, which is our only connection to the present moment. And the only thing that we have with us all the time. We carry this body around with us 24/7, 365. The last number we don't know how long we'll live. But we've been carrying it around since we were born until we die. And people are looking away from it. They're looking outside. And they lost that connection. So, and that's why because we have the body with us all the time, and it's literally just a quarter of an inch beneath your nose. There's this whole world of trillions of cells, 150 or more pounds, flesh, blood, and bones, trillions of cells, and they're all vibrating. And it's easy to connect with that if one knows how to. So anyway, that's the first stage of mindfulness, is learning how to get regrounded and connected in order to reach the mind. Because when we're connected and centered in the body, what triggers off our thoughts? Sounds entering the ear, painful sensations on the body. We react to those, and then the mind gets triggered off in thoughts and worries. Because again, it's not sort of centered and grounded. So anyway, we'll be talking more about that later on. But the main thing is, that disconnection from the body and focusing outside, we've lost the sensitivity to our bodies. And we've been disconnected from the natural wisdom. When you grow up and, now you're depending on your happiness for eating sweets and eating all kind of foods, listening to music, doing all these things that depend on the external world. And, basing all of our happiness on doing all the so-called things, normal things in the world, simply because we don't know any better. No one taught us. Hey, stay connected to your body. Did anybody ever tell you that? Your mother or father ever tell you, hey, stay connected to the body? Yeah, you can think, you can do things, but at least 20%. Remember that you're standing, or you're sitting, or you're breathing in, or you're breathing out. Doctors don't even tell us that. President of the country doesn't tell us that. So, you better take somebody like the Buddha or some other, saints and so on that have understood this. So to maintain that connection. So anyway, we become desensitized. And so we start consuming these things that are harmful for the body, like foods or other things, or in our haste to get things in the external world, we rush. And because we're not connected to the body, our mind is ahead of the body. So we're not aware of what our body is doing, and we trip and stumble and fall down, break our leg, break our arm, or worse. Because we're not centered and grounded, we make mistakes. We get into accidents. You're cutting your food for dinner and lost in thoughts about tomorrow or yesterday, and cut your finger. Or so many other things. Walking down the street, daydreaming, not looking where you're going, and you step in a pothole and twist your ankle. You step in some dog doo-doo and, get angry. That person should have picked that up. No, you should have been mindful and stepped over it. People think like that? No. They're looking outside for the cause of their suffering, and not to look inside to the cause of being unmindful, which then causes you to do things that cause you to get upset, angry, and hurt others. So that's why by being more centered and grounded in the body, you become sensitive to its needs. You can feel things more clearly. So like when in this country, teenagers are growing up and maybe they start smoking because of the peer pressure. I talk about my own personal experience with that, So maybe innocently you start smoking when you're young. Or could be eating junk food or any number of other kind of things, but smoking is a typical example. So after 3 or 4 months, smoking, the body starts going. So what's that about? The body's trying to tell you something? Hey, smoking's not good for me. So you start to light up another cigarette, and the body kind of trying to tell you, don't do that, don't do that. But the mind says, shut up. Right? So our mind is actually causing our body suffering through being disconnected from it and losing that kind of sensitivity. So anyway, I'm just saying all these things. It's just to try to weave together a kind of a picture of what we're up against in terms of the conditioning and the entanglement of our mind, in the world of pleasure and pain. It's connected with the past and the future. So now also the word meditation is very interesting. So it's an English word, meditation. Why did somebody pick the word meditation to represent, the Pali words of bhavana or samadhi and so on? What is meditation? How is it spelled? How does it start? M-E-D-I? It's a prefix. What other words start with M-E-D-I?
Medicine.
Right, medicine, media, mediator, medium. What do all those words have something in common? What do they imply? Something being in the middle, something being a bridge between opposites. So medicine is a bridge between sickness and health. right? He takes some medicine to try to overcome sickness and attain health. And the medium tries to converse with the departed spirits, connect them with the people still here on earth or whatever they imagine. And a mediator, what does a mediator do? Sits between arguing people or groups to try to resolve their differences. Now, what is meditation? What does meditation sit in the middle of? I've just been talking about it. The past and the future. So we're keeping our mind in the middle. Whether you're concentrating on the breathing or just remembering sitting, breathing, or, there could be other objects of meditation, but any form of meditation primarily is, at least Buddhist methods of meditation, are keeping the mind, focused on a particular, a limited area of focus. And, the breathing is one of the most common examples. So just remembering and feeling the breath going in and out of the body, whether you're concentrating and feeling the air going through the nostrils or you're feeling the expanding and contracting. Those are just present moment, vibrations occurring within the body. So we use those as to try to continually remember. And actually the word mindfulness, one of the meanings of mindfulness is to remember. But specifically to remember the present moment. So to remember what mindfulness of the body is remembering what this body is doing right now. And right now, what is your body doing? It might be doing a lot of things, but, very basic. Anybody? I've just been talking about it all day. Sitting and breathing. Is it? The present moment is that your body is sitting and breathing right now. Sure, the heart is beating, other things are happening, but that's the sort of, that's the container. So we just remember that. If you could remember that. If you could continually remember and feel, not just remembering, but actually feeling the sensations of it, without any intervening thoughts coming into your mind, within 5 minutes you'd be in a very, very deep state of meditation, and the mind would be totally content and blissed out, you could say. Even just that, even if you could be able to stop all your thoughts for 5 minutes and just be totally focused in the present moment, feeling those changing sensations. So anyway, that is really the starting point where the meditation occurs. And so that's what we've been trying to do, to work on, this first day of the meditation. But again, even though it should be easy, it should be the most easiest thing in the world just to remember that you're sitting and breathing, or any posture, standing and breathing, or walking and breathing. Our mind is making it difficult. It's not that meditation is difficult. Meditation should be the easiest thing in the world. Because present moment awareness is what we were born with. And for 9 months, that's all we knew. But our mind has made it difficult by being dragged out of itself. So it's about learning how to reconnect. Actually, there's an interesting saying in the Bible by Jesus Christ. Seems how this is Christmas time, He said, it's or somewhere in the Gospels, it says it's harder for, in order to reach the kingdom of heaven, you have to become like a baby. And that was the meaning of it. That means your mind has to come back and just be open, grounded in the present moment, not thinking about the person who hurt you last month and projecting where you're going to go on your vacation in 3 months, and all these different worries and fears and anxieties that arise. The mind is resting in the present moment, more or less. So, I will be talking more about this as time goes on, but I just wanted to say that much about it, just to re-emphasize why we're using this, developing, trying to stay connected to the breathing in the body. Now, some people talk about just concentrating on the breath only. They say mindfulness of breathing. But most people's breath are so shallow that it's not easy to, and they usually teach you to feel the breath going in and out of the nostrils, where it touches the tip of the nostrils, and it's not a very strong sensation. So the mind easily either gets bored and goes to sleep, or it thinks about so many other things. So you have to give it something a little bit more dynamic to feel. And actually, in the Buddha's teaching, he started with actually the posture. The very first instructions of the Buddha, people often overlook this. They say, oh, meditation starts with mindfulness of breathing. No, it starts mindfulness of the posture. Because in the suttas, first thing the Buddha says, you find a suitable place to meditate, you cross your legs, keep the back straight, and then mindfully breathe in and out. So he mentions the posture is the very first thing. And he says, keep the back straight for a reason. The Buddha didn't mince his words or waste words. So he said, keeping the back straight for a reason. And that's because our mind works through the nervous system and the spinal column that's connected. All the nerves of the body connected from the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and skin. They're all connected to the nervous system located along the spine. So if you're slouching like that, you impede that flow of nervous system energy, and that's why you get lost in your thoughts. Or you start to go to sleep. So that's why he mentioned that attention to the posture started with that. And then when you're sitting straight, the breath will be able to come in a more fuller, natural way. Because if you're slouched over, that compresses the lungs, and you can't really breathe in very fully that way. And so the body remains half starved of oxygen. So sitting straight, the ribs can freely float and expand. The air can come in like that. You hold it in a couple seconds, allowing time for all that oxygen to get out in the bloodstream. And you feel the out breath. Doing that kind of deep, slow breathing is a very powerful way of bringing the mind into the body. Anyway, I think that will be enough for this Dhamma talk. And if any of you have any questions about anything that we talked about, you can write them down for later on in your breaks for our evening discussion. So now we're going to pause there. So now you've been sitting for a long time, focusing outward. So skill in meditation is how quickly you can kind of just, cut off that outward awareness and bring your attention to the body. So we're going to stand up in a minute, but just for a minute, just close your eyes, try to sit straight, take a couple of deep breaths, hold in the air for a few seconds, bring your mind to the present moment, try to feel the outline of the body. Just remind yourself of sitting, sitting. Slowly breathe out. Just take one or two more deep, slow breaths. The mind get recentered inside. Okay, now go ahead and mindfully stretch out your legs. You've been sitting for an hour or so, so stretch out the legs and then slowly stand up. We're going to do a short standing awareness and maybe a quick walk around the room before sitting down later for a longer sitting meditation. If you need to use the restroom during this time, you can do that. Otherwise, just do some standing, breathing. Side. Feel your feet pressing the floor. Feel your arms and hands hanging at the side, clothing touching the skin. Finding the outer body. Take a few deep, slow breaths. Bring the mind to the body. After breathing in, hold the air in the lungs for 2 or 3 seconds. Feel that subtle oxygenation of the blood. Cultivate. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, standing here and now. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, standing here and now. Breathing in, feeling the whole body. Breathing out, feeling the whole body. Breathing in, standing. Breathing out, standing. Try to feel the outline of the standing body in the mind's eye. It's like looking through the eyes, looking into a mirror. Feel that vague silhouette. The breathing in the middle. When you do deep, slow breathing, that sends rippling effects outward throughout the whole body, like throwing a stone in a pond, ripples go out. When you do some deep, slow breathing, it sends these relaxing, soothing ripples of oxygenated life force throughout the whole body, mind, nervous system. Allowing the awareness to rest more in the present moment. Now we're going to do a kind of a body scanning awareness to try to feel, different parts of the body and sensations in different places. So again, just starting with the head, just feel your eyes in the sockets. And feel the eyelids stretched over the eyeball. Sort of gazing in and around the eyeballs. Feel the subtle eye movement. You might see some color, just darkness in the eyes. And feel some sensations on your face, skin stretched over the front of the skull. Feel those kind of stretched sensations, subtle tingling sensations, prickly sensations on your nose, forehead, cheeks. And feel the lips touching together. And feel the dryness or the moistness in the lips. And feel the tongue laying in the mouth. The tongue may touch your teeth, other parts of the mouth. Don't think about it, it's the raw sensation. You might even just kind of press your teeth together to feel that sensation of hardness. And kind of feel inside the throat. The thick flesh of the neck inside the throat. And the sensation you want to cough or swallow. Just move the attention down to feel the shoulders. Feel the weight of the arms hanging from the shoulders. Let them relax, that weight of the arms, shoulders, relax downward. Feel the clothing touching the skin of the shoulders and chest. Take a deeper breath to feel the expansion of the chest and the clothing rubbing the skin of the chest as it expands and contracts. Hold the breath in a couple of seconds. Feel that expanded chest. And let the awareness move downwards to the stomach area. Feel the clothing touching the stomach. Feel inside the stomach some remnants of digestion, stomach pain. Feel the expanding and contracting of the abdomen from the breathing. Any thoughts arise, let them come and go in the back of the mind. Keep the attention on the pure physical sensation. Feel your hands and fingers. Feel the subtle tingling sensations or pulsations, or the warmth in the palms of the hands. Feel that organic life force vibration. Now feel your buttocks. For 1 hour, your buttocks were compressed, sitting on the seat. Now they have a chance to kind of expand. Should be lots of sensation in the buttock. Also in the whole groin or pelvic area, lots of different sensations. The raw life force vibration. And letting the awareness kind of move down to the leg. Feel the different sensations in the legs. The clothing touching the skin of the leg. Moving down and around the kneecap. Feel that soft flesh in the back of the knee. Moving downwards to feel the thick flesh of the calf muscle, lower leg. And feel the feet pressing the floor. Sort of imagine 100 or more pounds of bodies pressing the feet on the floor. Feel those subtle life force vibrations in the feet and toes. Just remember standing. And just let the awareness kind of move back up and settle on behind the eyes. Try to feel that outline of the body. All those different body parts and places, sensations make up the feeling of a standing body. Which is a mental perception. All those vibrations that you're feeling are just billions or trillions of cells and molecules vibrating, interacting, keeping this body alive. Just feel that organic aliveness of this body. Breathing going in and out. The heart beating, pumping that oxygenated blood out to the cell. See if you can kind of visualize that or feel it. What it felt like in the womb. Be aware of any thoughts trying to come into the mind, steal your attention. Be aware of that stream of thoughts going through the back of the mind. The more physical vibrations you can notice, the less time for your mind to get lost in thought. Standing, breathing, heart beating. This body is the true home for consciousness. It's a natural resting place for consciousness. All the awarenesses of those individual cells feed into the web creating our consciousness. self. It all starts with cellular vibration. Okay, now we'll do another short session of walking around the room to maintain that kind of level of body awareness, even as you're walking mindfully around like we did this morning. And while you're doing the walking, particularly try to pay attention to the mental intention, which is like a kind of a thought. It's a mental intention to move the body, to lift your foot off the floor, swing the leg forward, requires a different intention, to lower the foot down, move the body forward. All of those are different impulses in the muscles causing the body to walk. If you're really focused, you can observe that body-mind process. You have to stay concentrated. Let's go ahead and begin to coordinate the steps. Lifting, swinging, placing, shifting forward, in breath, lifting, swinging, up, placing, shifting forward, stopping at each corner to make a mindful right angle turn. Just hearing. If you think about it, it's thinking. Bury the mind deeper in the body. Sounds arise, then vanish. Anytime the mind becomes a little drowsy or too many thoughts, go back and do some deep, slow breathing. Help stay more awake, centered in the breathing body, feeling more of the activated life force vibration. Be alert to how quickly thoughts arise, urges. In sitting, out, out, sitting. So many different sensations coming and going, thoughts coming and going, sounds coming and going. They're all just coming and going through this breathing body awareness. You can't control the sounds, the body sensation, or even your thoughts. They come and go on their own accord. And awareness is merely the witness. Sounds distract the mind, it's just hearing. This empty sound vibration arising and passing away. It's your mind that turns those sound vibrations into ideas, perceptions, and make you angry, happy. Bury the mind deeper in the body, feeling subtler, subtler sensations. What thoughts arise in the mind based on that sound vibration? When you're ready, you can slowly come out of the sitting awareness. Stretch your legs, come up into the standing. If you need to, you can use the restroom for about 10 minutes. We'll begin the yoga session.